And one more thing I'd like to talk about for this week is padding. We haven't, we will be working more with padding very, very soon. And, oh, I'm sorry, there's two things I need to cover. I'm reviewing my notes. We also have hyperlinks. Okay, so padding is something that spaces things out. Now, how it spaces things out exactly, we'll get into that when we talk about the box model. But for right now, what you need to know is, like right here, we have all sorts of paragraphs and they're super tight together. And we don't necessarily want that. So we're going to redefine an HTML rule. I'm going to click in one of these paragraphs and click on the paragraph tag and create a new rule for the paragraph tag. And also watch where this is selected. So these are more global things. So we got our universal selector that star selects everything that it possibly can. Then we got the body, which is sort of the parent of everything. And then we have this all images that are inside of a hyperlink do whatever it says. In this case, it's no border. And then we had that paragraph that we deleted a moment ago, but it had an ID of intro picture. So we're getting more and more specific. I would like to set paragraphs. They are a tag, and I would like to set the padding on them, so I want to get them off the edge and away from each other. And there's something else we can use to do this, but for right now I'm just introducing padding as one way to start controlling the layout just a tiny bit. Very soon you'll be able to do all sorts of stuff, but this is one step in that direction. So how do we get to padding? Well, we did it when we worked with that universal selector in the previous video, but we're going to go where I'm going to remind you now, we're going to go over to box, and here is where padding is. So if I decide that all of my paragraphs, and maybe I want them, so this is a box, there's boxes around everything, so a box has four sides. A paragraph has four sides to it, the top, the right, the bottom, and the left. And again, we'll talk about this with the box model. But maybe I want them to be spaced 25 pixels apart on the top and the bottom and the left and the right. If I click apply, after doing that, it looks like that's what should be happening, but there's a heck of a lot of space here in comparison to that. Shouldn't that be the same? Well, what's happening is I said I want a top padding of 25 and I want a bottom padding of 25. Well, then this also gets top padding of 25. So when you add the two together, you're getting 50. So there's a lot of ways you can handle this. You can say, well, the top gets 12 and the bottom gets 13. Or you can say, you know what, with what I'm doing, it's fine if there's nothing on the bottom, like that. And now I'm getting that 25 pixels. Like I said, you could divide it up. You could say 20 here and 5 there. Doesn't matter, except you watched it move up because that went down to 20. Instead of 25. So it just depends on what your design dictates and how to work it out. But this padding thing can be applied not just to paragraphs, but you've been introduced to the section element and the article element and the aside element and the nav element, and I showed you how to wrap your overall layout with a div. All of those things can have padding applied to them. And there's also margin, but we'll get into that next week. Okay, so there is still one more thing I would like to talk to you about. And you read about it, you read about pseudo classes, so I'm not going to explain them. I'm just going to review pseudo classes. I'm going to remove this puppy because he's in our way. Hold on a minute. Let's just get rid of him completely. There. All right, so we have these links, and pseudo classes are how you give your links different color and different appearance, and they need to show up in a particular order. So let's just move this paragraph above this very specific thing, and then way up here is probably where I would set my first grouping of links. So here we go. We're going to do this with a new style. And we can do class on this, and if we choose, oh, it doesn't do it with this. Wait, is it compound? There they are. Okay, so when you choose compound and you choose from the drop down, you can see that we have all 4 pseudo classes right here. So we have a link, a visited, a hover, and a active. And this is really the order that they should show up. The only problem I have is that it doesn't let me, I don't think I can I add another to it? No. I can't add more than one to it, and I typically do that. So if we want a starter, we can go a link, and that is going to target all of your hyperlinks. That's just the initial state of the hyperlink. So we're going to say, okay, a link, and I'm going to say that all of my links do not need an underline. So text decoration of none, and if I click apply, there goes my underline. And I want all of my links to be, maybe I want them to be red. I have no idea why, but I do. And that's, I'm going to leave it at that. Just really simple, okay? But I don't want it to just affect the link state. I want it to affect when a link has been visited. So we've got a link, and now here's where you have to do a little hand coding, a:visited. We saw it over there in that control panel, but we couldn't choose 2 at one time. So now this affects links if nothing's been done to them, and links if they've been visited. So someone's been there. Okay, so I'm going to go over here, and I think that I like my links just a little bit higher up in this, just because they're usually something I look for right away. Okay, so, oh, and we're going to get rid of this local style here. Okay. And I would like to create another set for when the person rolls over the link. So I'm going to do that next. I'm just going to click on one of these and see what it does. Oh, nothing. Okay. So we're going to go to compound, and we've dealt with link and visited, and now we're going to go to hover. So hover is when you roll over, and all I'm going to do is change the color. So when they roll over it, I'm going to have it be just, I don't know, blue, for no reason whatsoever. Blue. Normally you would have a reason. And maybe when they roll over it, we're going to have an underline show up. Okay? So apply. Okay. Now, there's a partner with this. Just like a link and a visited commonly are colored the same thing. They don't have to be, but commonly they are. A hover gets that 4th one as well, a active. So active is that moment when you push down on the link and you hold it there, which you normally don't do, but if you were to, and sometimes when you see the browser process for just a second, that's the a active state. So you've got hover when you move your mouse over, when you roll it over the link, and then the active right just that second when the browser's processing what it's going to do with the link. So we're going to save all, preview in Firefox, and now when we roll over it goes blue and we have an underline, and when we click on it it still stays blue and we have an underline, and it's gonna, I had to click on the one that is the email one. Okay, let me close that out real quick. Alright, now what about if I have, let's say that this last paragraph is in my footer, and I don't want it to be styled the same way. Maybe I want it to be a different size font. I don't mind the colors, but I want it to be a different size font. I want something different to happen with the links in my footer, and this will happen to you this semester. It will. Well, we know in HTML5 that we have the footer element, so I'm just going to make use of it here and put this in the footer. We're saying that this is the footer, okay? So in the previous video or video back from there, we learned about targeting things that were inside things. Like here, we have an image inside a hyperlink, okay? This time we have a link inside the footer element. So it's going to be targeted in much the same way. So I'm going to click, and it doesn't know what I want. Let's hit compound and see if it doesn't. All it does is give us footer. So let's just write this from scratch, okay? So we know we just dealt with a link, and we've decided the links that are in the footer need to be smaller. So we'll type in a link. Remember, we read these things from right to left. So we know we're dealing with a link, and that's the thing that, that we're really trying to affect is that hyperlink. And we know it's in the footer element. And remember, the space right here means within. So a link, literally a link within footer. Really what this is saying is an anchor tag that's behaving as a link within the footer element. Now let's do another one. Remember, we group these. If you look over here, we see that we've got a visited. So let's do it again. We've got a link that's been visited, an anchor that's been visited within, so we make a space, the footer element. We're going to say OK, and this time our font size is going to be, we're just going to make it super small so we know it's working. We're going to say apply. Look, it's totally working. And this one is not as global. This has to do with the footer, so I'm going to move it down here a bit, or at least below the main ones. Alright, so then I have to create my other set within the footer because if I don't, watch what happens. It should, well, maybe because we did the link. It might act funny. We'll see here. Does it get big? Oh, it doesn't. Okay, it's behaving. To be on the safe side, I'm going to create another set here. And that set is going to be this A hover, A active. So here we go. We have an anchor that's being hovered over by the mouse within the footer element. And we have an anchor that's actively being pressed on by the mouse, or the browser's thinking about it, acting on where it's going to go, within the footer. And again, we're just, hold on, compound, and I lost it off. Oops, okay, so hold on one second. Footer, A, hover, footer, A, active. Alright, and remember to check and make sure it's going in your main CSS file too. And the font size I think we chose for this was some ridiculous thing like 6. There. So now we have a full set for things within the footer, and I could change the color. I just have to modify this and go in and say, well, no, the color needs to be this or that, or I don't want an underline or whatever. You can modify it just like any other rule.